Welcome to New York Nonprofit Media. My name is Jeff Stein, and I'm here in the CEO Corner with David Rivel, who is the CEO of the Jewish Board, one of the largest social service organizations in America, and I believe the largest in New York.
Yes.
In the five boroughs. And notably, very recently, you acquired what was $75 million worth of programming from the now defunct organization FEGS, which has that closure has spawned so much conversation, and really the impetus for bringing you in today to speak about the Blue Ribbon Commission report that you were involved in. I think maybe we should just jump right into that. There was a panel discussion last week speaking about all of the factors that lead to closures such as FEGS and the bad business climate, really, as many nonprofits see it for organizations. You said something that I thought was really smart about, the government contracting for a bridge that cost $40 million would never pay $35 million for it. Why do you think that there is that culture and that expectation that government agencies can underfund contracts, can pay 80 cents on the dollar, and what do you think it will take to change that culture?
I think that part of the challenge is that nonprofits are just so passionate about the work that we do and the folks that we want to help, that if government says, we'll give you a contract, we can only pay you 90 cents on the dollar, but do you want to do it? People will say, yes, because this is what we were all born to do. This is what our missions are as organizations. And it wasn't that long ago that governments actually paid 100 cents on the dollar. It's really only 10 or 15 years ago that we started to defund the industry and require nonprofits to do more and more private fundraising to fill the gap left by government. And it's resulted in a situation where you have a lot of nonprofit organizations on the brink right now. A number have gone out of business. It's not just FEGS. Steinway went out of business a few weeks ago. Daytop, one of the largest substance use providers in the nation, Palladia, all sorts of organizations have either closed or decided they need to merge with somebody. And it's really reached a crisis point in the industry.
Right. How much of that do you think is sort of, I know that the report goes into this, but duplicity in terms of auditing? I remember you talked about, I think you said 250 times a year your organization is audited.
Yeah.
How do you think that can be streamlined, and how do you want to work with government agencies to make sure that happens?
Well, one of the main things that government doesn't pay for is this horrible sounding thing, administrative overhead. Nobody wants to pay for administrative overhead, but administrative overhead is stuff that you need to do in order to do work. It's not fringe, it's not extra. It's things like paying a finance department, which needs to bill for the services you provide, needs to write paychecks to all the staff doing the services. It's the development department that needs to raise the money to fill the gap left by inadequate government funding. And it's all the corporate compliance and auditing staff we need in order to meet the requirements set by the contract. So for government to set up all these expectations and then to say, well, we're not actually going to fund you for all the things that you need to do as part of the contract is a little bit unfair. Auditing is just one piece of it, but yes, we are audited 250 times a year by a variety of different agencies. I have full-time staff who do nothing but just respond to government audits. Now, it's appropriate for there to be government oversight of the work that we do, but there's got to be a way to turn 250 audits into maybe 50 audits. There's got to be a way for government to ask for certain types of information once during the year. Every single audit looks at HR records, files of employees. Every audit looks at financial performance, and we're providing the same information over and over and over again. And that's definitely an area for savings. There's no doubt. Government has so much data from nonprofits that even they can't digest it. So we're all involved in this empty exercise of submitting information, responding to audits, and government isn't even able to take a look at it, analyze it, make thoughtful decisions about what that information means, and make changes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because I remember someone on Wednesday told me, there are auditors in FEGS office every single day too, and somehow, they got a clean bill of health 3 weeks before the collapse. What do you think is missing in that process? Do you think that it's sort of a forest for the trees scenario, and there needs to be different types of auditing or less audit? I mean,
No, I think you've put your finger on it. I mean, people come in and they look at very specific things, and they do miss the big picture. Government has all of our financial data. In addition to our 990 forms that we have to issue every year, government has our audited financial statements. They also have something called a consolidated fiscal report, the CFR report, which is an incredible amount of detail, but it's just sitting there. No one's really able to analyze it because there is so much data sitting there. If people had analyzed that data, they would have seen that FEGS was on the brink even before FEGS itself knew about it. There are just a handful of financial indicators that people really need to look at, that boards of directors need to look at to know whether an organization is healthy or not.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into maybe the more inward-looking call to action that the report brought up. Involving boards. How do you think that you can, organizations who are watching your organization, how do you plan to really involve your board of directors, have them understand really the getting into the weeds and avoiding the sort of collapse that you saw with FEGS?
Well, it used to be that most of the human service organizations, most nonprofit organizations in New York were run by practitioners, right? Dance companies were run by dancers, human service organizations run by social workers, psychiatrists, clinicians, and our work has gotten so complex that I think boards are realizing that they need a different sort of profile for their senior staff and for their own board of directors. And I know at the Jewish board, increasingly we're bringing on people who have significant financial experience and other types of business experience, whereas 50 or 60 years ago, people who loved the mission of the organization was really sufficient because, again, government funding was really enough to cover the costs of the services. So people could focus exclusively on mission and providing good, caring, professional service. Of course, we still have to do all that, but now there's a whole nother layer of things that we have to do, not just around financial work, but also around data analytics. We bought a business intelligence software system which creates a data warehouse and helps us analyze data. I mean, that's something we wouldn't have even considered 5 or 6 years ago. And now everyone on our staff is busy getting up to speed on using data and getting more comfortable, becoming more outcome focused. It's a big change for our field.
How much of a shift do you think needs to occur in just saying no to contracts that that organizations know are just going to be toxic for their organizations?
One of the things the Human Services Council report talks about is actually beginning a rating system for contracts. Say green light, yellow light, red light for contracts. And boards would be able to say to their professional staff, you may not bid on a contract that is a red light or a yellow light contract without getting our approval or without demonstrating X, Y, or Z. I think that's a very helpful step. But the other thing that has to happen, as you say, is we have to learn how to say no. We did it ourselves about 6 months ago with a contract that came out of a city agency. We said, look, there just isn't enough money in this contract for us to do the services you're requiring us to do under the terms of the contract, so we're not going to be able to do it. And the government actually went back and they rejiggered the contract and they provided a new version with richer funding, something that we were able to say yes to, and now we're going to be able to do the program. But it comes back to the passion that we talked about before. We might say no, but there are 10 other organizations say, yes, we want to do it because it's such a great service that we want to be able to provide to people. So we all have to get a little more sophisticated and we have to get a little tougher. For-profit organizations, when they bid on government contracts, are happy to say no. You know, if the Department of Education wants to bid out pencils and it costs $5 million to do it, but they're only going to pay you $4 million, everyone says no. They pull the RFP back, they redo it, and then they get bids. You know, for-profit contracts are pulled back all the time because people haven't bid or people have said it's not sufficient. And in the nonprofit world, we need to engage in that dynamic a little bit ourselves.
Right. Well, thanks so much for coming here to share that message, and we wish you a lot of luck with all of the new programming.
Thank you. It was great to be here.